On to number 8.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, nanozymes, replicating nature's catalysts for health and environmental breakthroughs. So nanozymes.
We know what enzymes are.
Yeah. So nanozymes are this idea of creating artificial enzymes using nanotechnology. So yes, an enzyme, of course, is a biological molecule that catalyzes reactions. Incredibly important in biology for allowing things to happen without it costing too much energy or ways of getting over energy barriers. So all of biology runs on enzymes. But for a long time, people have thought, because enzymes are really complex, can we actually manufacture artificial enzymes using nanotechnology? And it has to be nanotechnology because biology works at a nanoscale with molecules. We're now getting to the point where we can begin to design and engineer these nanoscale enzymes, these nanozymes. So the story behind here, and so this is a little bit sort of unveiling sort of the process behind the scenes.
Sure.
Because this was really pushed and proposed by a good friend of mine, Javier Garcia Martinez, who wrote this up. And Javier has been pushing these for years.
He's been on his agenda.
And every year we look at this and think, nanozymes, is this really a thing? And then this year, I actually decided to do a deep dive. And actually, this is where AI comes in. In the meeting, I was sort of asking ChatGPT deep research, is there anything in these nanozymes thing? And it comes back with this report saying, yeah, this is a really big business.
Nice.
So and it wasn't necessarily this that flipped it, but I think it certainly made me realize that something that I thought was still sort of in a sparkle in the eye of nanotechnology researchers actually is something that is maturing and going to be really impactful.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. And again, it's interesting because I feel like there's a thread here of a few of these that you could kind of cluster together that are all under this synthetic biology, synthetic space too. And again, I will call back to I forget which episode number it was, but it's one of those Emma where we talk about synthetic biology because so much of what the future development of these, I think, hinges dramatically on what we were talking about in terms of this idea of care behind this as well. Which, I mean, again, this is one of the things that having these things were not connected. And I loved reading in the report, again, even just as the WEF report surfaces and highlights these challenges, right? That as with all of these things, that there's a lot of challenges in terms of the ethical considerations of how these would be created and used, understanding how they would work through and safely through evaluations and in the environment. And that it's not this is the new technology and we should just go forward at all costs because there's a potential market or economic incentive.
Right. And the reality is that enzymes or nanozymes, catalysts are incredibly powerful. And so just to reiterate this, and this is not necessarily just in biological systems, it's any system where you're trying to create stuff. So the problem with the biological and chemical world is you can have one bunch of chemicals that represent a certain amount of energy. You've got a product that you want to make from them, which represents a similar level of energy. But to get from A to B, you've got to get over this massive energy bump. It's like sort of in conventional sense, sort of you're sort of sitting on one side of the Himalayas and you want to get to the other side.
Just a matter of going over that.
They're both on the same level, both on sea level. But to get from A to B, you've got to have this massive trek, which takes up so much energy, it's not worthwhile. But the enzymes effectively allow you to tunnel underneath and get from A to B incredibly simply. So this is the only reason that biology works. And this is how heterogeneous catalysts work within sort of material science. But if we can take the secret sauce of enzymes and manufacture them, we can effectively create these shortcuts between the sort of the base materials of what we're trying to make and the final product.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly exciting. I mean, again, with knowing that on that side of that is all of the things that need to happen to make sure that it goes according to plan.
That's right, because the problem is if it's really easy for these chemical reactions to take place, sort of what happens that you don't want to happen?
I mean, does this?
Because of course, when you think about sort of powerful chemical reactions, this is what happens in a bomb.
Yeah.
And we're back to nuclear power.
And here we go. Go ahead and put some of that right in the old veins there. We'll, I forget which, I think it was a Iron Man movie where they would go around and they would like become like human bombs because they would change their, I'm like, yeah, we don't need that.
No. That would be, this is not what nanozymes
That would be considered a negative outcome.
Right.
Well, at least you hope. Right.